An interaction diagram is essentially a visual guide that describes the user's experience through the app. Where do they start? Where do they end? Where can things go wrong? What sparks joy? Where do they have fun? Where do we have an opportunity to add innovation, to create some new experience that a user hasn't seen before in this type of app, or this type of game, or whatever it is that you're building? So the way to get started with this is to talk slowly through the experience of a user as they interact with your app. And as you're talking, draw a physical representation of what you're describing. I actually like to start off before drawing with writing an outline. Very simple, a couple sentences that describe each phase in this storyboard. Think of it as a storyboard, right? A couple sentences to describe what's going on in each scene here. And then I translate that into something that's more simplified and just drawing, right? So think stick figures, bubbles, and arrows with a few words between them to describe what's going on. That's a great start to creating the interaction diagram and something that you can use to work through the details and explain it to others. Let's look at an example I'm working on right now is an app. Let's call it social media game, right? We'll dig into the details of the specific name and the branding once we get further down in the road. But for now, let's call it social media game. And this interaction diagram I created in the earlier phases when I was just beginning to work through the details of the interaction, and I wanted to have something that I could explain to a designer that I was looking to hopefully to get them to work on the project. So let's take a look at that right now and see how this interaction diagram explains the flow of working through social media game. All right, so here's our interaction diagram for social media game. Just a quick view of the entire flow. It's pretty big, right? But really there's just a few phases that are repeated over and over again in the core part of the game because it's a round-based game, okay? Groups of individuals compete to play, to be the winner of a round, and the person who wins the most rounds, gets the most points out of 5 rounds of gameplay, wins. So let's dig into the details. All right, like I mentioned before, this is the initial draft of my interaction diagram. This is the first visual representation that I created for social media game. So some things have changed since this first version, but I'll talk through those right now. And then I think that's a good example of how the visual interaction diagram is useful to point out some things that you might think are cool in the beginning, might work out, but as you talk through them, with a good physical representation, a visual representation, then you might realize that maybe it's not the right approach. Case in point here, this first phase. So you have one person represented by one of these mobile phone blocks that wants to initiate gameplay with someone else. So you can tap your phone to them to prompt them to download the app, or if they already have the app, to join the gameplay. So you can have a group, begin to create a group with one other person. And that's one way to get someone to join your group. Another way could be to send a text message with a link to a gameplay. But yeah, in this first representation, I just said, hey, just tap a phone, and that's how you get other people to join you. All right, once I have multiple people in the game, so we get on to beginning the first round. So for the first round, one player is randomly selected as the judge. That's indicated there. And then you have 5 rounds of the core gameplay. Anyone can click start to begin gameplay. Everyone sees the same available challenges here, so people are going to compete to win challenges in social media game. The judge gets to choose the challenge. Everyone sees the chosen challenge by the judge, and the core of the gameplay is you have these challenges, right? And then everyone's able to respond to a challenge with a meme that they have in their photo library or on their Instagram or TikTok. When I was thinking that TikTok would be something great that we could pull into here as well, but it turns out that TikTok's API doesn't support that. It's not technically feasible, and the content might not fit because they're videos. But the big blocker is that it's not technically feasible because our API doesn't support it. So that's one thing that has changed here. Speed is a strategy, right? You win rounds by having the most points, and you get points by people voting on the challenge, the response to the challenge that they think is the best, okay? And you also get points by being the first person to choose your response to the challenge. So the person that responds first gets a bonus. And we can ignore this 0.25, that number could change, but it's just an indication that you get a bonus by being the first person to respond to a challenge. Once everyone has responded, the app shows a carousel of each story response, right? So you get to see this carousel video of different responses that everyone had to the challenge, and people could vote on which challenge they think is the funniest, right? That's what we're describing here. Players can double tap or whatever that interaction is to vote for their favorite response. And then the votes are worth 0.25 points, let's say. The player with the most points from that round is the winner, and the winner gets to be the judge of the next round, right? And the benefit of being the judge is you get to choose the challenge that everyone's going to compete against, right? We saw that at the beginning here. So in the first round, the judge is chosen randomly because nobody has won yet. And then the winner of the round gets to be the judge. The judge gets to choose out of the available challenges that are displayed here. What are we all going to compete? What challenges are we going to compete? Let's go back to, so the player with the most points from that round is the judge of the next round, and players can choose to share their carousel response as opposed to social media, right? If we competed in this round and our response to the challenge was very funny, then you might want to share it with some other people, right? And remember, this is a social media game. So we're competing to win challenges by taking some content from our phone or from our social media like Instagram, and that matches with the challenge. And then we're competing with everyone else to see which challenge gets the most votes, right? And that really comes down to, out of the individuals that are in the group, which challenge do they think is the funniest or the most entertaining, or that gets them the biggest emotional reaction from them. That's the core of the gameplay. And new players can be added at any time. And after 5 rounds, the player is the person with the highest score. One thing that I'm really excited about with this app is it's pretty simple. It's a game, so it's something fun to think about outside of like regular work and projects, and the actual gameplay is relatively simple, right? You have a round-based game. Individuals are competing to answer challenges using social media content, and that's what my interaction diagram here is explaining. Another thing that's interesting to point out, something that has changed since I originally created this interaction diagram, is this concept of players having to tap their phone to someone else to add them to a game. Because my initial thought was, hey, this would be great for a party, right? You're having a house party, and this is a fun game to play with people. You can tap their phone to invite them to a group. It works in that context, but what if I want to play this with someone who's not in the same physical space as I am, right? Think about how many group texts that you're in with your friends, and how often you send funny images from social media. You send memes from social media to friends in your group chat, right? Have you ever sent a meme to one other person in text? You probably have. Have you ever received a meme from someone? I want to say that everyone has received a meme from someone in an individual text. What about in a group text? Do you have a text with a few friends, and has anyone ever dropped a meme in there that's gotten a reaction? That's the core of this gameplay, right? It's 5 rounds of gameplay built off of this interaction that we do all the time with our friends, right? We're in chats or on Instagram, and we're responding to funny things that we share to each other, funny memes, right? The gameplay is built on top of that interaction. And that's what I'm trying to describe here. So that's one reason why tapping on phones is really not essential here, because we want to play this with people that we might not be located with at the same time. So that's about it. That's interaction diagram for social media game that I'm working on. I would like to hear while I was explaining this, if there were any parts that you thought especially confusing, or that you liked or didn't like, or you want me to explain a little bit more, add a comment, please, and then I will dig into that in the next video, okay? So I think that's it for this example. So the next step that you would take from this is, once you have this interaction diagram, you can use this to explain your idea to others. So the step that I did after this was the interaction diagram that I used to explain this to the designer that I got on board with this project. And this is something that he used as a foundation for turning these rough stick figures and bubbles and everything into an actual mock-up, right? Wires in a mobile format that describe the gameplay that we're describing here. So kind of bringing this closer to reality from this abstract interaction diagram to the actual format that it will be in reality, which is a mobile phone. So check that out in the next step. I hope you found that helpful, and that you now have a better understanding of how to go about creating your interaction diagram, part of the process of bringing your app idea to life. I'm Charles, I'm an engineer. I've been building products for large companies for many years, and I've created Brave Labs in this space to explore my own creative projects and to share what I've learned over the years with you, other creative individuals, technical or not, who are interested in knowing how to bring your app idea to life. Please hit subscribe and follow along as we develop social media game and go through the next phases, including taking the interaction diagram, working with the designer, helping them to understand what we're trying to build in social media game, and turn that into more branded actual designs with wireframes, and then taking those wireframes and looking for inspiration and adding in fonts and colors and creating the whole world around this app that we're building, and then technical development and getting this into the hands of users and seeing how it works, right? We can also get some feedback from users earlier on in the stage once we have some more interactive prototypes, right? So hit subscribe, follow along there, give a thumbs up if you like this video. Let me know in the comments if there's something that you want me to dig into more, a little bit deeper. Hit thumbs down if you really feel so inclined, and also drop a comment to tell me what it is that you didn't like, and I can address that on the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone. You have to be brave to accomplish your goals, right? So that's what we're doing here. See you next time.